defunding the police.
Police reform bill.
These two statements have been flying around social media and news sources and have raised a lot of questions. What is the goal of this public outcry for police reform and defunding? To understand this, we need to look into the past to see how racism has shaped our country. Basic racial brutality to African Americans have been present for many decades and can be traced all the way back to slavery. After the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln stating all slaves are now free, groups like the KKK and legislature like Jim Crow laws started popping up to defy giving African Americans their rights. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2009, African Americans made up only 14.7% of the total U.S. population, whereas white Americans made up around 76%. But of the 1,099 police killings every year in the United States, 24% of the victims were black. Some studies say that in their lifetime, black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. They're also 3 times more likely to be searched, twice as likely to be arrested, and 4 times more likely to be threatened with the use of force, according to the Justice Roundtable. This excess use of force can be seen in multiple cases, like Breonna Taylor getting shot more than 8 times, and more publicly George Floyd, who was caught on camera being suffocated by an officer's knee for over 8 minutes. George Floyd's death was the spark that started hundreds of protests calling for a change in the police force. Coming back to the question, why do we want to defund the police? For a perspective, in the US, we spend over $100 billion every year on policing, which is more than any other country in the world. That number has also tripled in the past 40 years, even though crime rate has steadily decreased. The US also has the 6th highest number of deaths caused by police officers in the world. Some advocates want to decrease spending on the police and instead invest the money to other parts of the community, like healthcare or in schools. The money would also go to help poorer communities so they wouldn't have to turn to crime in the first place. Studies have shown that African American poverty rate is almost twice as high as white Americans, so investing the money back in the communities would have a direct effect on them. Others fear a rise in crime rate if the budget is cut and instead suggest police reform. Police reform could include adding specialized police units, body cameras, increased defensive training, increased legal accountability, and stricter protocol. These are only some examples of possible solutions for this problem, and the government is not just standing by. In June of 2020, Congress introduced a bill to ban chokeholds like the one that killed George Floyd, and several states including New York, Delaware, and Nevada have already passed bills for just that. Also back in 2014, former President Barack Obama even created a task force for the 21st century policing, giving the public more data on police shootings and removing unjust policies. With Christian values, we need to strive for peace and equality, but those changes can only be made by our state and local government. In order for proper change to happen, we have to work on both sides of the equation, not just one. Stay educated, learn different points of view, stand up for unjust systems, help poorer communities, inform others of the truth, and encourage your local government for police reform. You are how change happens.
Hi, my name is Claire Parsley, and I'm a junior here at EMHS. Being new for me meant constantly getting to know a lot of different people that I'd just regarded as strangers like, a day earlier, which is a lot to take in and adjust to, which made transferring to EMHS slightly scary. I had Miriam Rhodes, who introduced me to a couple people, which was really nice, but besides that, it felt like it was like a clean slate, and I had to get to know everyone as soon as I could, otherwise it would be like playing catch up for just a really long time. And there were so many stories and memories and tight friendships from previous years, and it just kind of felt like I didn't know exactly what had happened, and I was just this new kid, and I thought it was going to take a really long time to get tight with everyone, but luckily I was a part of musical at the beginning of the year, which was a nice chance to talk to other people that previously I might have just seen in the halls and, not interacted with. And I think it was really nice to get to know them when we were working toward a common goal, being the production. And that definitely was a time I guess I first felt I belonged or fit in, because I could bond with the people around me and just hang at rehearsal and talk to people, which was nice. But even after the musical, it still felt like I was kind of the new kid and I was less familiar with everyone, and people just knew each other better than I did. And it was kind of hard to adjust to that because I was so used to being at TA. But with time, that began to change because I learned a lot more about everyone and what had happened previous years, and that helped me kind of feel like I was a part of the memories somewhat. But I think some of the bigger hurdles to get over with belonging is that it goes both ways, and sometimes it might be easier to picture the people around me as abstract concepts or assumptions I made about them at first. But that's kind of like a destructive attitude because, for instance, maybe I see someone as intimidating or grumpy instead of extremely caring, understanding, and reliable, and also just a person. So shout out Hannah Hendricks. But seeing some surface traits and makes everything more me versus them, when I feel like you could have a lot easier time getting to know people when you just see them as a person who isn't extremely different from you, which is definitely my view of things, but it's also kind of a cliche because it's true. I think it's just much easier to talk and go up to people and act yourself around them if you just picture them as someone a lot like you. But that was something that was still really difficult for me to do. And I think mostly the biggest hurdle for me to get over was seeing that there are going to be seeing that there are going to be people I'm unfamiliar with. But that doesn't mean I should adjust the way I act to present myself around them. Sometimes it's easy for me to feel like I have to change around different groups because I'm scared of what they could think of me. But doing that to yourself just makes it harder for you to belong, especially if you're toggling between different traits you have, or maybe even finding middle ground in your personality in attempts to blend in or just act normal. I think that's just going to make it a lot more difficult because you'll never feel like you belong. You'll feel like all these things you're presenting or these surface level concepts of you are what are fitting in. I don't know if that made sense, but I feel as though you can only be comfortable and feel like you belong once you've been accepted for being authentically yourself. And you can't do that if you're not presenting your authentic self, which I get is easier said than done because I definitely don't always feel like I'm doing that. But it's hard to know, I guess. You can push yourself out of your comfort zone. Sorry. You can push yourself out of your comfort zone to fit in, or you could avoid pushing yourself out entirely. But I think the key thing is to not do it because of others. Do it because it's how you feel you should be. I mean, if you don't want to push yourself too far, don't. But definitely don't be afraid. Well, can't say definitely don't do something, but I'd encourage not concealing any piece of you because you're afraid of how others will interact with that. Because it's just, I feel like I've seen a lot of my friends or people I know have difficulty getting to know others because it's hard. I guess in general it's just very difficult, and I've never been a new student, so I was learning a lot this year. But unfortunately that seems to be a large part of how people try and belong. Maybe you find a comfortable middle ground or make sure that things you do can't be so easily picked at, or you only expose the parts of you that fit with the people you hang out with. These are oversimplifications, but they're definitely patterns I'm seeing. I feel like all year I've been thinking through all of these things, and I had decided that there'd be no point where I'd feel like I belonged. Instead, I would just be kind of chasing after that feeling. But I think I was kind of wrong about that, because I'm recording this after I just got back from my touring choir term, and I had a lot of people there I was familiar with, but also like plenty of people I'd barely spoken to or was slightly intimidated by, honestly. But something about singing with them and playing a variety of games and debating over existence and just hearing them share like their thoughts made me feel really happy, really good. I didn't really feel like I was different. I just felt like I was there doing the same thing as everyone else. I was practicing the songs, and I didn't really feel like the new kid at any point, which was new for me because I've almost always felt like the new kid. I never felt like I wasn't wanted or there was nothing to do, and it was just a really good feeling. And I'm sorry, this will probably sound cheesy, but I couldn't place what it was for like a bit. I was like, I had a lot of fun there. I don't really know why it felt so great, but I guess it was kind of like that trip I was just on was like the moment I kind of felt like I most belonged. Like, it was just awesome. I know I'm not always going to feel that good about everything, and I'm definitely going to have ups and downs or moments where I'm like, but in general, like, I think there are going to be moments that you can feel like a sense of belonging to the people around you, and I think it's a mix of all the things that I just talked about, having to get over those things. And anyway, that's been my experience at EMHS, and I would say that EMHS made it very easy to, yes, very easy to transfer. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was, and I was definitely very scared about it, but the EMHS community made me feel a lot more free to change. It made me feel better transferring, and I'm glad that I came here and met all of you guys, because you're pretty fantastic, if I do say so myself.